That's what I want to be called.
We're just waiting for your entrance.
Yeah,
So,
sorry. It took me 13 minutes for my computer to get here.
oh, yeah, okay, well,
We
with
are-
that, I guess, we have a quorum, and I'll call this meeting to order. This is a Wednesday, May 12th, 2021 meeting of the Manitou Springs Planning Commission. And for the first time in my time on the commission, over 25 years, I'll call the roll, since that's something I noticed in the updated standard operating procedures that was suggested. So Commissioner Casey,
I believe I'm here.
Commissioner Simmons,
Here.
Commissioner Storm,
Present.
Commissioner Latimer,
Present.
Commissioner Armstrong,
I'm here.
and I am here. I'm Alan Delwich. So with that, we'll go right into our meeting. The first item of business is approval of the minutes for the April 14th, 2021 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the meetings of last month's meeting, the minutes of last month's meeting.
Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, just raise your hand.
I'm abstaining. I was absent.
Okay, so that motion carries 5-1, 5 with one and one abstention. So we'll move on to our unfinished business, and I'll just briefly describe the process. When I call an item for consideration, planning staff will describe what the request is, what their analysis and findings are, and what their recommendations are. Following that, we'll allow the applicant to speak and state their case. Following that, we will open the hearing to the public to make any comments they have. And following that, we will close the public comment period and deliberate and vote either to approve, deny, possibly table, possibly modify in some way. And we'll follow the guidance of the zoning code as we do this. And we don't legislate, we are just interpreting what's in our zoning code. So are there any conflicts or ex parte contacts to disclose? Okay, I see none. So the first item of business is rezoning 2102 commercial to general residential, public hearing, 16 Mayfair Avenue, Affinity Consulting Group applicant on behalf of Virginia Star Morgan Trust owner. I believe you're muted right now, Michelle.
Thank you. Sorry. It's going to be one of those nights. So this is a request for rezoning from the commercial to general residential zone district. You had the preliminary meeting, the initial meeting, as required by code at the April Planning Commission meeting, at which time you scheduled this meeting as the public hearing, and there wasn't any other action taken, and there wasn't any additional information indicated that you requested. So the rezoning is to facilitate construction of an addition and renovation of an existing house on the property. That house has been on the property since about 1920. And so the property's been used residentially ever since its development. Staff really doesn't know the background of why it was zoned commercial, but obviously the residential zone is a long-standing use, and so the zone district would be compatible with that. Staff has gone through the criteria for the rezoning and has found that it does conform to the criteria in regard to consistency with Plan Manitou, policies and goals. It does comply with applicable statutory provisions. So the general residential zone district both the permitted uses and the purpose actually conform with the current use of the longstanding use of the property. As staff noted, the building has been there since actually it's 1929. And so there really hasn't been a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood. Actually, the use predates the zoning. And so as I mentioned, I'm not sure why it would have been zone commercial unless for some reason the thought is that the property would somehow morph into commercial use. Public facilities and services, the property is already served. There's a paved road. It has utilities. There's no impacts to public facilities and services. In regard to natural hazards, again, the property's developed. We did receive the geohazards, tier 1 geohazards report that the applicant went ahead and had done and received that. I sent that out yesterday. It doesn't have any, issues that it notes. It has what ends up being a pretty standard recommendation regarding if any expansive clay is found when the foundation for the addition is dug. But other than that, it doesn't note anything that would give pause or make staff want to put a different condition or additional conditions or change the recommendation. So the proposal meets that criteria and would not result in a higher risk to natural hazards or geologic hazards. The rezoning is compatible with surrounding land use. Actually, this is the third of properties basically identical to this one that were zoned commercial but have had longstanding residential zoning that longstanding residential use that we've processed for rezoning in the last couple of years, right immediately adjacent to this property. So it's an area where these property owners, I think, are agreeing that they really need to get their zoning updated and in conformance with what the land use is. And by virtue of the fact that it's been developed for residential use since 1929, staff finds that it is suitable for that proposed use and that zone. The property also abuts the general residential zone of a property that's across the street that is one of those three that has been rezoned recently. And you have a section of the zoning map that's provided with the report. Staff also went through the application and the information that was provided. Of note, the applicant did do a public facilities and services impact report. We discussed that a little bit at the initial meeting, and you do have the tier 1 geohazards report that I just spoke about briefly a moment ago. Staff finds that all of the information in the application has been provided. There wasn't any requirement for a citizen participation plan and report for something for an action this size. We wouldn't generally require that. We did have a couple of comments for the initial meeting. One in favor and one had some concerns. Staff did reply to the neighbor that had the concerns after we received that letter, those comments, and provided some more information and I think a better description of what was actually being proposed. We've not had any more public comment, and that other neighbor, the neighbor with the concerns, didn't attend the initial meeting. I don't know if she might be in the audience tonight, but we've not had anybody else that has commented or re-commented since that initial meeting. We did also send this out for comments from utility departments and other entities that we normally request comments from. We didn't receive any adverse comments. City Street Department, Fire Department, various utilities don't have any concerns regarding the request. So based on the above evaluation and the full report that the Planning Commission has, staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to City Council on RE 2102 for rezoning the property known as 16 Mayfair Avenue from the commercial to the general residential zone district as proposed.
Great. Are there any questions for staff? Okay, I don't see any questions. So at this point, I see the applicant is here. Can we bring the applicant over to the panel?
Michelle, who are the appropriate people to bring over?
Oh, let me look here.
Sure, I have Ryan and Virginia.
Oh, I think both of them actually.
Okay, I'll bring them over.
Okay. Let's see, if Virginia could turn your camera on, that would be helpful. Great. Okay, so could we have first start by stating your name and address for the record? I think you're muted.
Mm-mm.
Ryan.
Oh, now we
there-
hear you, Virginia.
We hear you.
16 Mayfair, Managing Director, 0829. I'll let Ryan speak.
Okay.
Ryan Kerniger, and my address is 2803 Ute Drive in Colorado Springs.
Okay, thank you. You've heard the staff report, and I'm sure you've read it. And welcome your comments and thoughts on this. Anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm glad to hear Michelle's findings. I think it's in agreement with everything that we've provided. I'm glad that we got the geohazard hustled through and Virginia did everything to get that through for this meeting. And I'm happy to hear from that report too, that at least it's just stays at a tier 1. There's no concerns. Yeah, we're just excited to be able to help her move forward to do she's just doing a small addition. So and it just cleans up all the zoning. So I think in that regard, we're just pleased that staff has found it all amicable. And I think, like she said, it just fits with the neighbor across the street and what they have had to do. And for Virginia's family and having this house in their family for all those years, that it's just back to general residential allows her to kind of just move forward is great. We're pleased. So thanks.
Thank you. Would anybody, any questions for the applicant? David?
I'm not sure it's at all relevant, but I was curious. Was there a drawing showing the 3 lots that you anticipate? And I just missed it in the packet. It looked to me like it's being really tough to do that, so.
Well, that-
There is a preliminary drawing that staff has, but what was provided for the rezoning, because the subdivision action is the replatting action is administrative. So we provided the exhibit showing all the lots and where the house is and all of that for the rezoning action.
Okay, in other words, there isn't, and it's not needed.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing no one having other questions, I'll open the hearing now to the public. If anybody would like to comment on this, they can raise their hand and we'll bring you over to comment. We'll give it a second. I see no hands raised. So at this point, we'll close the public comment part of the hearing and we're ready to deliberate and decide what to do. Thank you applicants for participating, and we can put them back in the audience now. If we have more questions, we'd ask you, but I think we're okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay,
You ready?
yes,
For a recommendation, a forward recommendation of approval to the City Council on RE 2102 for the rezoning at 16 Mayfair
okay,
for commercial to general residential.
okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I can second that.
Okay, that's Commissioner Casey seconded that. Any discussion? If there's none, then let's vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, and that carries. That's 6, and so that carries. And this will move on to City Council for the final approval. Now, I can't remember what the date is, but
June 1st.
June 1st. Okay, great, thank you. And I'll note for the record, we now, Commissioner Lewis has joined us and she can participate for the rest of the deliberations. So the next item of business is major development 2101. New residential development, 6 El Paso Boulevard, Walter Harder of 6 El Paso LLC applicant. And variance 2107, a height variance 26.5 where 25 is required, 6 El Paso Boulevard, Walter Harder of 6 El Paso LLC applicant.
So we have, we're requesting postponement of these two applications to the June meeting. And we actually have the June meeting pretty much queued up to hear all of the remaining applications for this property. They're submitting for a major subdivision and a subdivision waiver in addition to these two items. And that will be, except for one other item that's a city request, that's all that will be on your June meeting. So that should be hopefully a good, efficient way to, have the time to spend and be able to talk about this property without, a dozen other things on the agenda as well. So if you'd postpone these until June, then we'll be ready to move forward with the entire package, basically, at that meeting.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll go for a hat trick tonight.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to postpone both Major Development Plan 2101 and the variance 2107. I'd like to make a motion to postpone them to the June 9th, 2021 regular meeting.
okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no discussion, then let's, all in favor, raise your hand. And that carries. I'm not sure if Whitney is here or not. Possibly having some difficulties with the connection. So we'll just leave it at that. We have a motion that was postponement carried with 6-0. And we'll move on then to the next item is item 5. It's update regarding the zoning and subdivision code rewrite.
And I'll let Christine advise on anything she wants to regarding that item.
Sure, and absolutely. I have quite a bit for you guys. So I want to start off by saying thank you very much for participating in the joint meeting with City Council 2 weeks ago. I think it was a very productive meeting. I thought that the conversation was robust, and I certainly appreciated all of your guidance and wisdom that this group brought to that joint meeting. As we were rolling into that, we had already begun one aspect of the next phase, which included the reformatting, and that was discussed at the meeting. This, of course, included, or includes, I shouldn't say included because it's ongoing, some of the reformatting, elimination of the broken references throughout, which there were numerous, as well as consolidation of redundant sections. Just as a reminder, specific example of that would be public notice. Public notice is detailed in several different locations throughout our chapters, and it does create a bit of confusion. And so we will be consolidating that and making it very efficient. So that's an example that I would like to share, just to remind you of that. We, of course, are continuing stakeholder engagement interviews. This continues. Some of this is included one-on-one. These are as well group interviews. Next week, I will be speaking to the Judith Chandler, and a number of citizens in the community are actively involved in an environmental work group. And they're the ones who are spearheading a number of initiatives in the community. And so this will be the first formal discussion with that group about the code project and how their interests specifically tie into what we're doing. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think it'll be an excellent conversation. I would like to give us an opportunity in just a moment to hear any additional feedback you may have about the joint session. I've got a couple more things I want to run through, but then, would like to, if you have an interest, open it up to any discussion you might have in this meeting setting. The next phase of the project, of course, in addition to reformatting and some of the administrative work that has been going on in the background and will continue, we'll focus on design standards. And this is going to be a heavy lift. Right now we are working on the outline of what our survey process will look like and our engagement. We'll make the circuit again to boards and commissions that have an interest, and community groups that have an interest in this. We have an online survey. The last online survey ran for approximately 6 weeks. And of course, part of that was trying to really get the attention of members of the community, staff, any stakeholder, really getting their attention to understand that there was a survey, where to get it, where to access it, how to participate. This next phase, we are going to keep it open for approximately 2.5 weeks, and we have a very intense outreach blitz that will begin a week before the survey launches. And so that will include direct mailing to residents. It will be we'll notify folks through email. We have a variety of email sources at this point that we can send emails to folks who have indicated they want to be communicated with by the city. We'll be working with our city's PIO through social media and press releases, to let folks know that we're launching that. And really what that particular survey will do is it will try to get at how does the community define different sections of town, and the data that we gather will help us in formulating what will ultimately be some sort of design menu that we'll be bringing forth for discussion with Planning Commission, HPC, and City Council. And will take us, of course, into codifying that. As well, during the month of June will be the first, and now that we have all the other pieces in line, we can send these out, will be invitations for the first meeting of the advisory group. We're looking forward to robust conversation there. At this point, there's approximately 12 individuals who have volunteered. As the community dialogue has continued to increase, more folks are aware and have expressed an interest. So I'm hopeful that by the time we have that first meeting, we'll have closer to 20 individuals who have expressed interest. and really drawing from folks in the community who have professional or personal interest in this. I think we'll be able to do some good things. So with that, I wanted to, I guess, turn it over to you guys, hear from you. I did hear from a number of you individually after the meeting with some of your perspective. Part of what I'd also like to have this group entertain is that this morning I was asked if we could consider having a monthly coordinated meeting with City Council to discuss topics and this project. I haven't had a great deal of time to put that together against the schedule that we have already mapped out and our deliverable schedule. So I do need to look at that just a little bit and see what we can do there. And what is being proposed would be the fourth Tuesday of each month. Looking at May, that's May 25th. It's in 2 weeks, a little less than 2 weeks. And we wouldn't be prepared for that. So I don't think that would be feasible. But the next one would be June 29th. And then we can go through and look at the additional dates there. So what that would mean in terms of what we need to consider for that is your time. And if you're able to do that and willing to participate in something like that on a monthly basis or on a every 60-day basis, which that right now lines up more with our deliverable schedule and the contract schedule with the consultant. So if we decide that we're able to do this monthly and that's something you're willing to do, I'll go back with the consultant and their contract and see how that works out and where we can possibly move things around to be able to add in those additional meetings. So with that, I'd love to just kind of turn over to you guys at this point. You've had a couple of weeks to digest it, and I'm sure you've heard from folks in the community that you engage with personally and professionally, and would love to hear a little bit from you.
Okay, would somebody like to start off? Carrie?
Can I just ask a question on your steering committee? Are those people who are, is it residents only?
No, it's at this point, every single person is a resident, but anyone who's a stakeholder could express an interest. So for instance, if they're a builder or a contractor who frequently works in the community and can provide some insight and perspective in what makes a workable code, they could participate. But a general resident from another community, no, I wouldn't expect so. But having said that, I haven't been contacted by anyone who has that demographic.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, anybody else? The thoughts, questions, comments? Gloria?
Thank you, Alan. Just one question regarding the priorities that we discussed last time. I was wondering if those, how those are being refreshed as there's more stakeholder input, because one of the things that came up from a few different perspectives was that those might be more first reactions than really thoughtful, reliable data that they could be counted on.
That's a good question. We are going with sort of those big boulders that have to be lifted first. And one, for example, is design standards, design guidelines. That did have a lot of support, and we recognize that even when we filed the grant application, that this was necessary. And so I think that there will be some tweaking along the way of those other priorities. Having said that, it's interesting because I was talking with someone who, actually I was talking with Jim Reese from the URA yesterday. And he said, I found it odd that the URA was such a low priority. And he asked me what I thought about that. And I said, well, I think what that actually means is that it's not perceived as there are problems there. Right, there are some issues that folks have around design, again, design standards, clarification of of guidelines, but the URA as a specific item, there aren't as many, there's just not a lot of concern out there. This does get, I'm glad you brought this up, Gloria, because I think that this gets at part of the request that was proposed to me this morning about what if we got together and had a coordinated joint meeting every fourth Tuesday of the month. And the idea would be that we could discuss 2 topics. We can't really get at 2 big topics, right? The big topics are heavy lifts. And so perhaps that would be a good opportunity to have discussion around one of these big ones, like for instance, design guidelines and standards, and then something that's smaller and that wouldn't require hours of discussion. So that might be a way to accommodate movement around of priorities.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, I gave you more than you were looking for, didn't I?
That's all good.
I'll just make, one observation with the URA. I think there actually is concern, but it's more global. And so I think people didn't want to single it out per se. Definitely design standards has been something that really, actually the URA precipitated our first interest in having design standards, or our first notice that we should have them and we don't. And the other thing is lighting, and both of those things are being addressed, lighting and vegetation and so on. So I think it's out there. It's just not, I guess people didn't want to just really zero in on the URA I think it's that may be part of the fact that we didn't shine a lot of light on it in the community. But
Sure.
anyway,
Sure. And they're
regarding
issues, they're universal, right?
Yeah. Regarding the monthly meeting, I think that would be great. And those of us who can participate, that's fine. I know we all have busy schedules, and so if we can, we can. If we can, I mean, it seems like several on council really wanted to have more time and more engagement. So I'm perfectly willing to participate in that. And I'm not sure what others think, but.
Well, I agree completely. The major takeaway from that meeting was to focus on those individual 7 or 8 topics. So, if we can do it, if we have time, like Alan said, sure, it's a great idea.
Any other thoughts on anything? David? Oh, you're muted now, I think.
All these comments about content certainly make sense to me. I think there's something that precedes that, and it's what I would suggest. It's very important how we go about this, as well as what we do. And I'm familiar with planning commission meetings now for over 20 years as an applicant, as an interested neighbor, and now as a commissioner. And we have disagreements, but we disagree in a way which is very respectful, considerate. It's just not a problem. And I guess, you can't control anybody. It's only in the nature of a request. But I would request that if we're going to have these meetings with other members of the city government, that there be an understanding, maybe even in my professional life, we always use the rules of engagement before we began, so that a certain amount of decorum is observed. It's never appropriate to attack a member of the city staff. It's never appropriate to be rude to anyone else in the meeting if we're representing Manitou. And as I said, I don't think that's ever a problem with the Planning Commission. But my request, and I guess that's all it can be, is that people pay some attention to that, the participants, and then behave in a considerate and respectful way.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I'd be happy to attend those, Alan.
Great. Julia?
I also am willing to attend a second meeting a month. I just wanted to ask what the timeline would be on that. I'm sure that budget and deadlines are difficult, and I know that you have a lot of evening meetings, a lot. Does this help facilitate your end goal of your deadlines and your budgets? And if so, I think we all sound like we're willing to accommodate that.
Sure, that's a great question. Because the request was just really formally put forward today, I haven't had that opportunity to consider that. Well, I've considered it during the day, don't get me wrong. Those were some of my immediate thoughts, of course. But to really analyze that and come back and say that we could do it and it won't cost us additional for our contract. Here are the efficiencies it'll create, because I think there are times that it may create incredible efficiencies. And to your point, David, just a moment ago, that if we are all there and prepared and engaged and ready to go, wow, we could really do some great things. And I think that will get us much closer to success. I am constantly concerned about for lessons learned from the past, from opportunities that haven't worked here, and so I'm constantly looking for ways to ensure that that doesn't happen to us this time. And, and this is a unique, we are approaching this in a different and unique way for the community from what has been done before. And I think having joint meetings would be a part of that. So, to answer your question, I really need to be able to spend some time, and I'm frankly not going to be able to do that until this weekend at the earliest, to really sit down and figure that out and mesh our schedules around and that sort of thing.
Okay. Gloria?
Yes, as an alternate, I'm happy to participate when needed. And I think starting with the issue of design standards might be a good place as I'm recalling the list of priorities, because I think that's one of the hottest issues on the list, and one that people will have the most opinions. And I certainly second David's comments about strong opinions that tend to denigrate one neighborhood over another are not appropriate in this level of discussion.
Ellen, I'm assuming that it doesn't make any difference if someone is an alternate or not.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, for this, we're all able to participate.
Yeah, Gloria, last week, I was very much struck by your thoughtful and prepared comments, and I hope you would attend those meetings.
Yeah, be glad to do so. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think this will be helpful because, I understand there was some less than optimal decorum at the last meeting, but I think that the message that came across was people really wanted to work through it all and, and take it in smaller bites. So I think this is great. And if we can do it every month, that's wonderful. If it's every 2 months, that's still better than just at the end having a massive fire hose shot at everybody. That's kind of what happened when we did the planning for hazards, and people were drowning with all, just looking at the red lines. And so I think it'd be great if we can do this as, collaboratively between the commission and council over the next several months. So, anyone else have any thoughts? I think we've all spoken. Or Mike, looked like you were about to raise your hand. No.
Thanks.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's really exciting to have something in our hands, right? So to start having some data collected and be able to look at that, I think is really important. And, you know, as long as we continue to move along, I think in a data-driven way, then it helps with some of the other soft issues that can sometimes befall processes like this. So with that, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of the communications and outreach that I've received from most of you after that joint meeting, and your guidance and your insights. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so the next item is Planning Commission Standard Operating Procedures Draft, and I wasn't sure if we were going to discuss that or just give an overview or what.
Sure, I had not really intended to go into any kind of in-depth discussion at this meeting. I wanted to get it into your hands and give you over the next month, or even 2 months, we'll see what kind of time there is at the June meeting to, look at it, make notes. Feel free to, send information to staff or feedback in the interim, or, however you want to do that. But I figured it was something that would be better to give everybody some time to look at instead of spending, an hour and a half going page by page and talking about it. I've already noted myself that I want to have online meeting guidance now that we've been doing, this, and, noting in the SOPs, the guidance for that, and that you all can engage in online meetings, I think is a good update that we'll be adding to all of the boards and commissions that we staff. You all have not had operating procedures or bylaws. It's been something that's been on staff's list for a very long time. And it's called for in the reorganized board and commission section of the municipal code. And so we want to, get you the same kind of guidance that some of the other boards and commissions have. And certainly, as Alan noted, like with the roll call, if there are things that you don't want to do, none of this is written in stone. And so if there are things that you think is just, going a little too far, or it's out of the ordinary, and, you're whatever, you let us know, because this is a start. It doesn't necessarily have to be the end all and beat all. So that's really all I wanted to say. And I hope you guys will just go through it, and, please feel free, either bring notes with you or send them to staff ahead of time. Either way it's all good.
Great. Yeah, I thought it was a great start, and it'd be good to dive into it a little more.
Great.
Can I make some comments on that topic, or you want to talk about it later? Or?
Yeah, well, thought we'd very high level, but it sounded more like we wanted to digest it for a little while.
Okay.
Okay. With that, I guess the next item is notice of council action and updates.
So council did approve the major conditional use permit for the Chisholms, for the Rocky Mountain Beignets at their May 4th meeting. And it was approved as recommended by Planning Commission. And I am working with the Chisholms on going through the 14 conditions of approval and making sure they have everything they need to in place before we issue a business license. The property owner, I did find out in the last couple of days, the property owner has submitted to CDOT for permission to do the utilities improvement, the sewer line separation, and CDOT has not yet issued the permit. So I did reach out to CDOT today and just kind of nudged them a little bit that, this isn't just affecting these business owners, but, every week that goes by, our downtown gets busier. And, that area, those surrounding businesses are going to be impacted during the days that it's going to take to get that utility work done. And so I've just asked them if there's any way that they can facilitate to please do that. So it may mean nothing, but at least I tried. But yeah, they're very anxious, and they're moving right along with I think they've done some painting, and I'm sure over the next few weeks you all will see see the upgrades and the changes to that area.
Great. Any questions? Okay, I just have one more item, just briefly, at our last meeting, it was brought up the idea of having our council liaison attend our meetings. And I did some research and spoke to our liaison, and basically we have, I think in fall of 2020, the council approved standard operating procedures for council. And it very explicitly states there that if liaison for a quasi judicial board wants to attend a meeting where there are quasi judicial items under discussion, they may consult with the city attorney on whether they should or not. So that kind of comes back to the kind of sentiment that we've had over the last several years, that it's best not to have people who are going to deliberate attend until it's their chance for the hearing. But what I propose as a possible way, at least to have some interaction with our liaison, would be to add a section at the beginning of our meeting. We could do it at the end of the meeting, but that, our meetings sometimes are 30 minutes, sometimes are 3 hours. So it would really put the liaison on the spot, sit up and wait for a call. And when we go back to in person, it would get that much more convoluted. So anyway, that's something that we could possibly entertain, is to have our liaison participate up until we start the quasi judicial elements of the meeting. So throwing that out if anybody wants to weigh in or.
That makes a lot of sense.
So.
Do we have any input on who our liaison is?
Yeah, right now it's Julie Wolf.
I know. But do we have any input on who our liaison is? How is that person assigned?
Oh, that's the mayor. The mayor comes up with the list, and then I believe council approves the list early on in the, I don't know if they do it annually now or every 2 years. I believe it's annually that the mayor makes the assignments. And I'm sure they interact with council members. And certainly we could always give our input too, if anyone is, welcome to. Christine?
I see that City Administrator Denise Howell has her hand raised. She
Oh.
may have some additional input on that. Should I bring her over?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks for catching that. I'm not quite used to seeing the hand raise.
Good evening. Thank you. I just wanted to say, yeah, Alan, you finished that off. You can definitely request from the mayor of who you would like to be your liaison, and then they can talk about that at the regular meeting. And they always set that at the beginning of every year. So the next time that will be reset is in January.
Okay, thank you. Gloria?
I was just wondering if there are sort of, I guess, not really standard operating procedures, but it seems like the liaisons should act in a similar way, whether they're historical preservation or planning commission or whatever. So I wondered if there's some expectation of what the liaisons should do. And I don't know whether that's for Denise or Christine or
Well,
you.
It's in the standard operating procedures for council. If you like, I'll drag up that SOP and we can email it to everybody just to take a look.
Actually, I think I included council's SOPs with yours so
Okay.
that you could see those. So you should have them in that same document.
Section 9 does mention the council liaison on the document we just received in the packet.
Okay.
Thank you.
So maybe that could be something we review over this next month and give feedback, because certainly this group is an end user of that particular SOP, right? And so if you may have some specific thoughts and recommendations and requests that Chairman Delwich could take back to the mayor and to council and as well, yeah. So, Michelle.
Michelle?
I just wanted to, I don't know if anybody, and they may have, but I don't know if anybody has asked Jeff Parker, are there parameters that could be set where he would feel more comfortable with liaisons attending meetings? That as long as they don't make a comment, as long as they advise council, if there is a hearing on something that they sat through the planning commission meeting on, that that they did that, they sat through the planning commission meeting, because council's given the information that the planning commission has, during a hearing, and it's given basically the minutes from that meeting in the notice of action that talks, gives all the discussion. So maybe if Jeff could become a little more comfortable with that concept, then maybe he'd be okay with it.
Okay, well, I know, we have heard this in the past from Jeff, but we certainly could formulate a request to weigh in it on again, as he's done, I think, numerous times in the past several years, but certainly we can ask one more time and express our interest. And Denise, you had your hand up.
Yeah, two quick things I'll say. One is, I think you guys what is the reason that you went the liaison there? What are you wanting from them is something to ask, right? The second thing is, Michelle, we have gone through Jeff on this, and Jeff is very adamant that if it's a quasi judicial, they cannot attend this hearing.
Okay.
That it needs to be a hearing that you guys manage and you go through and you work through it. And then it goes to council for the next time. And Jeff has been very adamant. So we've asked him this a couple of times already, and he says they cannot attend the quasi judicial.
Okay.
And we can always do it, but if we go out for another ask, just know it cost us the city money, and I can pull what we got from him before. And I think he's going to end up in the same thing. Is it's really important that you keep that, because you don't want them to hear that conversation, right? Even though they can go on YouTube, and Jeff has said that, but you don't want them to be there. They're not. The intention is that they don't listen to that, so that whenever it comes to them, they start new with the new conversation and hear the hearing. It's a new hearing.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly as I remember it. I've heard him say that several times. So, I guess we do need to appreciate that we are spending money to ask a question that's been asked and answered at least 3 times in the last 5 years. So,
Yeah, I mean, now that the background's more clear, yeah, I wouldn't suggest that. He's given his opinion, and that's it. And I guess what you all would want to do is formulate an ask to council, maybe, and I do agree with Denise, defining what the desire is for the liaison, what you would like to see, what kind of benefit, or what do you want them to do, I think would be helpful. And it's not just planning commission. HPC is also feeling the same way. They're not very happy that liaisons don't come to the meetings and that type of thing.
And that is, I'm sorry,
sure, Denise.
Chair, that is part of the liaison. They don't always come to every meeting, and I think that's always been the case. Their meetings are every week also, and they can go till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So they may show up once a quarter. They may just read minutes and see if there's support, or if there are certain things that somebody needs from them. I think they expect that you reach out to them and say, we'd like for you to attend this meeting and provide this information. So it's just kind of that communication of what you're needing and how often do you want them to attend.
David?
Well, that's a very good point, Denise, about, why do we want our liaison to attend? But if Jeff is saying that for the quasi-judicial bodies, the liaison member is not supposed to attend, why do we even, looking at it from the other direction, why do we even have a liaison?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think, Denise?
I think that's kind of outlined, but the purpose of liaisons is that if you want to reach out to the council, instead of going and attending a meeting, you can go to the liaison, or if you're asking for certain direction, or you're wanting them to attend to get a perspective, or just wanting feedback of what's happening at the council. That's kind of that purpose, but it's not, they don't have to be at every meeting. I did not read the code that that's what happens, and many of them don't attend every meeting based on, again, they're attending weekly meetings and they last, they can go till 8 or they can go till midnight. So adding another meeting could be 5 to 6 meetings a month in the evenings.
Yeah, and I can see a reason to have interaction with our liaison on a periodic basis. I don't know that it has to be every month. I mean, it could be, but I can imagine, like, I think in the past where we've just had an opinion, like, we want to do this, or why can't council do that? It would be nice to just have a time, just to have a member, our liaison, and just say, look, we want to talk about X, Y, and Z. We'd like to, we have a concern that we have this dilemma when we deliberate because of some vagueness or some gap in our zoning code. And we'd like council to prioritize making this change or considering this change legislatively to improve our process. Those are the things in the past that we've talked about, when in years past when we did have a liaison. And so it's a way to just have that personal contact with someone from council. And of course, we all, it's free speech, and we have email for all our counselors, and we can always email, but it's kind of nice just to have the body as a whole sort of express their interest in maybe changing something. And I know in the last year or two, we've had a few things where we've sort of asked staff if they could ask council to think about something or other. So this is just one more pathway to do it. So I can see that explanation. Christine?
So it sounds then that, sounds to me that your suggestion then about maybe having portion of a meeting before any hearings are conducted might fit the bill then, if our liaison was asked to attend a certain meeting and it was only for that period before any hearings began, that may meet all of the criteria that we've discussed.
I'm comfortable with that. I think and I'm not sure it needs to be every meeting, but periodically, I think it'd be great. Oh, Julia?
I think Corinne, and now my memory's foggy because I was so new then, but I think Corinne used to come in early on in the meeting and talk about issues that she knew about affordable housing. Was that, or housing in general? It was early on in the meeting, and I see that it's been discontinued, but she was a valuable contribution to my education for the area.
Yeah, I think she and Bob Todd would actually sit through some of the meetings completely. They just pretty much were rebels and ignored the city attorney. And for years, with our previous city attorney, we had a liaison there almost every meeting. It was unusual not to have them. And then when the city attorney changed, the policy changed. And so we went through many years with nobody. And then I think Corinne was the first one to say, well, too bad, I'm going to show up. And then
Yep.
Bob Todd carried on.
I will also say that I don't argue with Mr. Parker. So
Yeah, I agree. If we hadn't asked the question before, I'd be more comfortable asking, but I've heard this so many times from him that I'm hesitant to do it again.
Right.
Gloria?
I'm glad to have this discussion because I was under a misunderstanding about the staff liaison's role. I thought it was more for collaboration and communication. And as I'm reading in page 5 of 7, it really is about assisting boards and commissions with budget proposals or any other duties as is necessary. So now I see that more as if we have something specific we would like to discuss with the council member who's our liaison, that's the purpose. But otherwise, there's no reason for them to attend our meetings. And in fact, they may be precluded from doing so. So I'm good now. I thought I was expecting more of a role of Corinne Toll when I was a commissioner before, who would often attend. And I thought it was, I misunderstood the purpose of the council person serving as liaison. So I'm good now.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, I think we're done then. This has been a good meeting, and if no other questions, let's adjourn, and we'll be back in a few weeks. So
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you
Bye,
very
all.
much. Everyone take care.